Hey, I'm Don Amaro, and this is Through the Fire, a podcast about overcoming adversity, reframing misfortune, and celebrating courage. On this show, you're going to meet some really incredible people who have been through some heavy stuff, but they've come through the other side. And the hope is that you're encouraged and inspired by the words that you hear. Today's guest is a singer-songwriter who's an up-and-coming voice in the folk and roots scene here in Canada. AHI is someone who's made a name for himself outside of Canadian borders first, and I can't wait to hear more about that. We're going to talk a little bit today about race relations as well, and about what it's like being somebody who's been marginalized because of the color of their skin. As always, we recommend you check out the episode notes or any resources we have over at donamaro.ca. AHI, thank you so much for joining me here on Through the Fire. I've known of you for quite some time. Actually, we have a friend, a mutual pal somewhere down the line. I have a friend, Melanie Reed, out on the East Coast in PEI. I think you've stayed at her place and did a house concert with her many moons ago. And I'm dear friends with her and her father, who passed away a couple years ago. And she was the first one to mention you to me. And then you blew up. You kind of were all over the place. And I was like, that's that guy that was at the Dunk where I was in PEI. Yeah. And so I've been following you ever since then. And to be honest, I kind of dove more into your story this week, obviously preparing for this conversation. And I got to say this, I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of your heart and what you do and your purpose. And I just want to give you all the kudos there, because there is a part of what you're doing that really resonated with me. So I wanted to start off with that. I'm just really enamored with your music and your story and your heart and all this, man. I really appreciate you.
First of all, shout out to Melanie. She's awesome. I spent like a few days there, and it was like a writing camp kind of thing. Not a camp, but it was just like a retreat for me to hang out, write music. And we did the house concert, and we bonded like so much. And she's such a real down-to-earth person, honest person. And that was one of my favorite experiences as an artist. You know what I mean?
Did you meet Catherine McClellan while you were hanging there too?
Yeah, so we went to Catherine McClellan, also lost her father, and she did a concert of his songs. So we got to go see the concert and get to meet her. She's awesome, and I met her daughter, and her daughter was so sweet. That PI was that whole East Coast trip. I did it during the fall, and I was by myself driving in a car, and that was one of the most calming. I don't know what was going on in my life at the time. Maybe it's nothing, but it just felt like such a calming time. And just driving through that area, just going from, where did we go from? Nova Scotia to New Brunswick to PEI. And it was all just fall colors everywhere. It was the most beautiful thing ever. And I'll never forget that time. You know what I mean?
I know it well. Yeah.
Right. The only qualms I have is having to pay $60 to get out of PI.
You can come for free, but you got to pay to leave.
You got to pay to leave. What is that? It's entrapment, literally.
Yeah, that's why their numbers are going up all the time, because people can't afford to get away.
Can't leave. That's great. I love it though. It was beautiful though. I had a great time.
Yeah, that is definitely a beautiful piece of our country here in Canada. I'm going to put you on the spot for just a second, because again, I dove into your story this week, and I don't want to tell your story. There's listeners out there that are maybe meeting you for the first time, listening in here today. If I was to ask you, could you give me a Coles Notes version of your story? It might be hard, because I know you've got an epic, journey up till now, but If somebody was to say, tell me your story, what would you share in that sort of, in a couple of minutes?
My story has so many parts to it. It's I think the definitive moment for me in my life, my career, is traveling. You know what I mean? And I would say that is a big part of my story. But my family's a big part of my story. But they're the next chapter or the sequel to the story.
Your kids, right? You're saying your
my kids, my wife, but the traveling, I backpacked across Ontario, backpacked across Trinidad, backpacked across Ethiopia, all vastly different experiences. Didn't realize how huge Ontario was until I got to Thunder Bay, and I was just like, what am I doing?
Before you go into that then for just a second, so what were you doing pre-backpack, before you put the backpack on? What were you up to?
Oh, right before that, I dropped out of university. You know what I mean?
What were you working on?
I was doing philosophy and political science, right?
Okay.
The two ones where you're like, what are you going to become after that? Like, I don't know. I'm going to just teach philosophy and political science and forever. But I was in university. I had a band with some friends of mine. We were called, it's very boy bandish, the name, not the band, called Back to Now. And we never did a show. We would rehearse every weekend and then go to Gage Park in Brampton and do shows in Gage Park. And I just started looking at my life really differently. I remember I was in a debate class. It was like not a debate class, but it was more like a how to build arguments for a debate, right? And I was just looking around my room and I was like, I'm not supposed to be here. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I just got up in that moment, nodded at my teacher, my TA, and left. And I'd say I never went back, but I spent the rest of the year pretending like I was still in school so that I didn't have to tell my parents. Because my dad, very strict West Indian household. You go to school, become a doctor, lawyer, teacher. And I just deviated. And I was like the first one of my siblings to be a honor roll student council president, very popular in school, very athletic. I had a promising future, right? But I was always like a wayward kind of guy, awkward dude. And I just said, I'm just not for me. My mom's a teacher. My dad was a teacher. My sister's a teacher. My godparents are both. My godmother's a lawyer. My godfather's a principal. My aunt is a teacher. Like, everybody's teachers in my family. So for me to leave school was a big decision. So when I finally told them I was leaving school, shortly after that, I moved out and then started my own life.
Was there tension? Obviously, I feel like there would have been tension in that.
Tension is a
light word.
Oh my God! Well, it was so tense that I had to move out. Right.
Right.
It was like I made this plan. I was like, the funniest thing is, like, in high school, I told my mom I didn't want to go to university because I was already losing interest in school, and I was better at convincing my teachers to give me good grades. And that my passion was for the work itself, right? I would like debate with my teachers and be like, this is why you should give me a good grade and this is what I deserve. And it doesn't matter if I can apply the knowledge I know because I know the knowledge. And I just good at talking to my teachers, and, it's probably all garbage in hindsight. But they liked me and they gave me good grades because they liked me. And when I did my work, I did it well, but I didn't always do it. And I just remember telling my mom I didn't want to be in the university, and she just laughed at me because it was just like, the idea was preposterous. And I was working with the Boys and Girls Club around that time, and I just remember saving all my checks. Every check I got, I didn't put in the bank. I didn't use it. I just saved it. And then when I dropped out of university, I spent the rest of that year. I spent like a year and a half. Well, I spent half. No, sorry. So I did a whole year normally, and then about a quarter of a year actually going to school, and then the rest of that year was me pretending like I was in school. And then when I left and I told them I dropped out of school, and I knew I had, at that point, me and my dad it was going to be too much. So I'm like, I got to prepare to move out. I presented my mom all these checks. I said, I want to move out. And then she laughed again. She's like, how are you going to do that? And then I just dropped a bunch of checks on the table. And it's funny because at the time I didn't even have a bank account, right? I was like, can you cash these for me, right? And I wasn't young, but I didn't do banking and stuff like that. I was the youngest of four, so very sheltered. And I just said, here, I have all this money. I want to move out. Right. And she did it. She was, at that point, she took me seriously. My dad and I had a big butting of heads. And the day I moved out, it was like, I don't remember a lot about it, but I just remember walking up the driveway and his, I don't remember what he said, but he was not happy. Right. And I think that kind of led me on like a more spiritual journey after that, because I was on my own, wasn't going to university. All my friends were in university. All my closest friends were in university. And I was just trying to figure out what's the purpose of life? I know that question sounds like flighty and, vague, whatever, but it was a big question for me. And it was always a big question for me in school, which is probably why I took philosophy and political science. Because I was like, what am I doing here? What is the purpose of all this? And those backpacking trips were a way for me to put myself in the elements and put myself in the world and just see, like, what am I without my parents? What am I without my siblings? Because we often... Our family can be the greatest helpers in the world, but they could also be the biggest crutch. You ever go to your parents' house and then you're like their child again, and they're like babying you, and it's kind of uncomfortable because you're like, hey, I can do this myself, or like we fall back into these habits because we built these habits for so long. And sometimes we just got to separate from everything.
As you're telling this part of your story, there's a part of me that goes, I don't think enough people do that sort of detach themselves from their home life and go, what's the purpose of all this? And I almost feel like that if more people did that, there'd be a lot more joy in the world. And sort of go on this journey.
To do that.
It's hard because you go, wait, I got to pay bills, I got to do this, I got to do that. Not everybody's going to say, I got a bunch of checks saved up and I'm going to have a backpack and go.
If family life was nourishing, progressive, and I mean progressive in the most non-political way possible, then we may not have to do that, right? Because a lot of us, and I don't want to get too heavy, but like a lot of us are dealing with trauma, like, you know what I mean? Big trauma, small trauma, traumatic experiences, things that shaped your mentality or your way of dealing with people in a negative way, right? So if you came from a healthy environment where people want to see the best for you, they don't put any boxes on you. They want to help you find what you're going to excel at in life, as opposed to just saying teacher, doctor, lawyer. This is all you can be. When like the whole legal system has thousands of jobs, right? Like I can be the, what do you call the guy who draws the person who draws in the courtroom, like stenographer?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the stenographer. You get what I'm saying? Like that's a viable job in that industry that most of us never think that we can do because it's doctor, teacher, lawyer, police, like these are game of life jobs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ultimately, what I'm saying is if we grew up in a healthy environment, an environment that thrives on allowing us to excel to our fullest potential, we may not have to take those trips.
Right, I see what you're saying.
I wouldn't want everybody to take those trips either. First, it can be dangerous. Like I was in several dangerous situations on my journeys, you know what I mean? And I was just naive and wide-eyed, so I didn't realize the level of, I backpacked across Ethiopia.
Is there one story that stands out in your mind when you say dangerous situations? I'm just curious.
Like on a very basic level, not dangerous in terms of getting robbed or beat up, but like in terms of like, we were on these things, I think they're called tap-taps. I don't know if that's the Haiti term for it, but there's the buses that they use I think they're called tap-taps, right? And you're driving on the mountains of Ethiopia. These are some of the highest altitudes in the world. Very narrow roads, and it's winding like this, going up, right? And like the road that I'm gonna be on in like half an hour is literally right beside me, but you're winding so much and going up these high mountains that it just takes forever to get there. Our bus crashed and everybody had to get off the bus and instead to like, I don't even know how you call someone in that situation. Like you walk to the next town, then they call from landline and then they got to pull out the bus from there and then replace parts of it. So like that's dangerous because the bus crashed, thankfully, but what if the bus went the other way and went down the hill?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I've left stuff on buses where like are in vehicles where it's like I had to go track the bus down or chase the bus down to get my stuff. You know what I mean? Like no one ever robbed me, and I maybe I look intimidating. I don't know. Like this is gonna sound horrible. The one benefit of being a black male with scraggly beard is that more people are afraid of you than you are of them, right? And so people tend to stay away from me. But yeah, ultimately, you're out there in the world and most people have good intentions and most people want to see the best for you, but money is a thing that if they think you have it, some people will do whatever it takes to get it from you. You know what I mean? And especially if they think you're vulnerable, right?
Could I just go back and ask you, so what in your mind said, I got to get a backpack and go? Like that part of your story is really intriguing to me because it was like you could have got a 9-to-5. You could have, did you already have music going on? Multiple layer question here, but you got your backpack and went?
The music was like I said, we had that band, but the band folded, and no one was taking it as seriously as I was. We weren't that great, but it was fun. It was exciting. And I spent a bit of time living with my sister and just kind of like reading a lot of stuff, doing a lot of writing. I like to write like books and ideas and stuff. And my dad's from Trinidad, so that was the first like trip that I took. That was like, I wanted to go to what I, call my fatherland, you know what I mean? Trinidad and Tobago. And it was, I just wanted to kind of, because it was awkward asking my dad, like, hey, tell me about your history. Tell me about where you're from. I just took it upon myself and did it myself. And it was more like a diving into my history and my past. And, I got to go see where like, crazy story. Like I went to the town that he grew up in and I just went into the random bar just to ask for directions or ask for something. And I was sitting down and I was like telling the guy who owned the bar, he's like, yeah, my dad's Mauro, he's from here. And then he asked, there's this guy sitting in that bar. And he's like, hey, you know a guy named Mauro who used to live back here? And it ended up being like my dad's best friend
No
from
way.
when he was young. And they still like talk every Christmas, right? I had no clue. Like I was in the general vicinity of where he lived. I didn't know where he used to live. And this guy was just sitting in the bar and then we started talking and just like, you know, he brought me to his house and whatnot. His name was, you know, Clive. And I was like, and then my dad found out, hey, you saw Clive? Like, and that kind of kindled like some kind of conversations between us. But that's just random stuff. You know, I'm a very spiritual dude. I don't really try to like beat it on the head. I don't try to like push it on to people. But I think like life is very deep. Like life is, there's more to this life than we realize. We're connected in ways that we sometimes are not paying attention to. And when you throw yourself into the elements like that, there's an awareness, for me at least, there's an awareness and a heightened awareness that I get that just like you kind of feel like you're in tune with nature. Like, you know what I mean? Like in tune with just things, and like it's weird and like almost like a movie, but it's I think there's something to life when you just kind of connect to people and you're open, just open. Those little things happen. Like what are the chances of me walking into that bar at that time and my dad's, now that the other side of it is like maybe he's just always in that bar and never never left that bar. Right?
Which
It's
is
like
yeah.
The chances are right.
A story within itself. Yeah. You know, it's interesting when you say that, like the term that comes to mind for me is open to the divine, whatever that should be, right? Like the idea of,
Right.
of you know, not being afraid to take the leap into something that you don't fully know the outcome, but you're like, I
Right.
feel pulled in this direction. And so, you know, I'm a dad, I got 3 kids. I'm a you know, full-time musician for 15 years. And I've really enjoyed my career, and part of it is this blind faith to just jump in going, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. I mean, I didn't have
Right.
any education or career plans other than music. And so when I jumped into music, it was very much like, I believe this is what I'm supposed to do, and I'm just going to be open to whatever the
Right.
divine has for me beyond this. And it's kind of worked out. And I think, you know, in your story, when I witnessed from afar, I'm really seeing a guy who was open to the divine, and somebody who's willing to take the leap, not knowing the outcome on the other side. And has that been a big part of your? Obviously, you just said like just sort of being open to
Oh, it's everything
whatever's
to me. Yeah.
ahead for you, and not being afraid to fail along the way.
Oh yeah, it's everything to me. Like, yeah, I put my faith in God in everything I do. I have a lot of faith. Obviously, coming from a religious background, like that was also part of why I took those trips to kind of figure out what was real. Because you grew up in the church, and the church is, I won't say this because I can get in trouble from a lot of people who are my fans, but I'll say, there's a lot of like distractions in the church, and a lot of like BS. Just put it that way, right? And if you're not, you know, and it's, but I do believe there's a tangible part of spirituality that, like, if we're all connected, you know, just really, like you said, open. So everything I do is guided by that, like, you know what I mean, to various degrees and various levels. Like, you know, every part of my trips, you know, going to Ethiopia, it's one of the most, like, some of the stuff out there is like the most ancient forms of spirituality and religion out there. You know what I mean? Like, we have living monuments of today that like embody things of, you know, the religious past or the spiritual past. And that opened my eye to things too, like to like the whole commoditizing of the church or spirituality, like going and people paying money to see what they believe is the Ark of the Covenant. I didn't do any of that stuff, but like there's people like paying money to take pictures in a place that they think that might have the Ark of the Covenant, and you don't get to see it because no one can see it. So how do you know it's there, right? But
Yeah.
I think at the heart of everything is people. You know what I mean? As people is this deep rooted feeling that we all have, and that we're all connected in an interesting way. You know,
I'm a faith guy. I'm a church going guy. And when you say, you know, that there's a lot of BS in it, I totally agree. And there's a lot that you're saying that, again,
Right.
kindred spirit, I feel like, you know, somebody who is, you're saying stuff that, you know, I've listened to some of your other podcasts and conversations you've had, and I'm going, this guy, I see eye to eye totally with I. And you're somebody who's really saying things that resonate with me. And so I'm really drawn to that. Now, was there a moment you're like, this music thing is working and I'm going to keep going with it? Or was it like, were you all in and like, it has to be this?
Oh, I'm still asking that question.
Yeah.
No.
Fair enough.
No. I think when my daughter turned 1, So prior to that, I was like making music, but I wasn't pursuing a career. I was just doing it. I loved it. I enjoyed singing. I enjoyed writing songs. Um, but when my daughter turned 1, it's almost like I just woke up one morning and went to my wife. I said, I'm ready now. Like, I'm ready to do this, right? And the first thing we did was a pay-to-play show. You know what I mean? And that went, you know how those things go.
Yeah.
But that was just me saying, I want to get out there. I want to share songs. I want to go and share my music with the world and try to make a career out of this. From there, we just kept going. And it's, it's been just about a decade since then. It's a little bit more than a decade. And so I've been doing it, but it's like I'm not the type of artist that has ever had just like someone just say, hey, I believe in you. I want to invest this much money in you. Or like a lot of artists don't get that. But like if people look at my career from where it began to where it is now, like you'll see steps, like you'll see like literal, like, oh, he went from this to this to this to this. So we went from doing pay to play gigs to saying, F all these pay to play promoters. We're going to become promoters, started putting on our own shows to, okay, this stuff doesn't work and I don't want to focus on other people's careers. I want to focus on my own career. Like if I'm going to do a show, put all my efforts into my own career. So I did a coffee shop tour, like a coffee shop a day. So I think we have over 30 coffee shops, but it's like some we did 2 in a day, all over Toronto and surrounding areas, and just perform at coffee shops because it's the only place that would let me perform without like any problems. I wasn't getting paid really. They'd pay me a little bit like tips, or like some coffee shops would be like, here's a little thing, or give me free food. Some of them were great and fun. Some of them were just like just the staff there that had fun. But it was like just turning that wheel and getting out there and getting repetitions for myself. And then the definitive moment for me was when we decided to go to England, right? It's very easy to shit on Canada and say negative things about Canada and the Canadian music industry, which I will do now. But, I don't want to. I feel like we have this thing. It's like it should be on like a coin or a dollar bill. Like, we don't always respect our own or appreciate our own until they go
celebrating our own. Yeah.
Right. We don't celebrate our own until they get celebrated abroad. It happens all the time. And one of the most iconic versions of that is a Feist, in my opinion. Right. She went to France and then she blew up. And I don't know, she was getting some love here in Toronto already, but like the notoriety she got. Drake is another great example on a bigger scale, right? But I remember Feist was always the example that I would hear before, right?
Right. Totally.
And I feel like, with my career, I felt that, I still feel that to this day, that I don't get the love in Canada, but that's another conversation. But going to England just opened up my mind to like, going to their open mic nights, and me, my wife, and my daughter at the time, she was like 3, just running up these stairs. I don't know if you've ever been to London, but like they have stairs in there, like the subway, that's just like crazy. Like it'll warn you how many steps you're going to take before you go up. Just so you know, there's 300 steps up these stairs. So if you want to take the elevator, you should find, and the elevator is like super far. You're like in the tunnel. It's crazy.
Right.
But we were just hustling out there, and you go to open mics, and there are people in some of these open mics that's like, you should be signed. And, and some of them got signed later down the road. Like we were in the same, I don't know if you know JP Cooper, but he's a huge artist. I think I don't know if he's still on Island Records but at the time I think he was. And he was just doing the same circuit that we were doing at the time. You know what I mean? I remember Ellie Goulden was like, she just popped up out of that circuit. Like she was doing these open mic nights in certain venues. So just seeing that and the possibility of like an artist being able to just make it from this circuit, where it felt like that was impossible in Toronto. You know what I mean? Like you could play Supermarket every weekend and it doesn't happen. Like JP Sachs is a great example. We used to all go to Supermarket together, and then until he went to LA, and it took a while as a writer. He was doing writing camps and whatnot, or just writing for himself as well. And he finally broke in with that huge song, obviously. But he was doing a lot of work before that. People don't realize, like he was at Supermarket with us every weekend. Him, his dad, and he'll tell you if you ever meet, like he cares to say it. Me and my daughter and my wife were out there every weekend at Supermarket. But you saw like a dead end there, that it couldn't go much further. So going to England was like, this is what it's about. This is how you get to that next level. Like you got to write great songs. You got to like be a performer when you get on stage. So I'll tell you one quick story. We were playing at a festival called Marylebone Festival. I'm probably saying that wrong. Marylebone, right? Festival. And I was on, and there's this artist named Pauly Money. Shout out to Pauly Money. My guitar string broke, right? and I didn't have a replacement string, and my festival set was only a certain amount of time. So the time it would have took for me to restring and figure it out.
There goes your set.
There goes my set. So she let me use her guitar, but it still pushed the set a little bit back. And then she went up and she had these little kite-shaped business cards that she put out in front. And when Matt, I think his name is Matt Bellamy from Muse, and Kate Hudson, I believe that was his wife at the time, I don't know if they're still together, with their child, were just walking through in their stroller, saw her perform, and took one of her cards. And then the next week, like in a week or two, she was playing at Stade de France to like a cap of 80,000 people. I don't know if they actually filled up that room. And I remember just thinking, man, like she was just ready. You know what I mean? And that the opportunity presented itself. You got to always be ready. And that's what England taught me. Like there's so many musicians like just out there, just always hustling. It was a beautiful thing, London. It was crazy, like fast paced. But that was the first time like in my career, I was like, okay, now I'm thinking like a competitor kind of, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like trying to seek excellence. And then the next stage of my career was Nashville.
Right.
Now that was like honing my craft. I want to become a better songwriter. Saw a show in Nashville at 3rd and Lindsley. Casey Musgraves was the surprise artist there, but all her writers at the time were there. So Brandy Clark, Josh McNally, and John Osborne were all writers at the time, and they wrote a lot of Casey stuff. And I didn't know any of these people. I didn't know who Casey was, didn't know who the writers were, but I remember just feeling like there was so much meaning to their writing and their stories and the way they broke it down and certain songs they were writing. I was like the songwriting, the craft, and like the tools they use to work into their music. It was like another level for me. And I said to myself, you know, oh, I'm not competing against my peers at Supermarket or in Toronto. These are my competition. Like, if I want someone to listen to my song over a certain person's song, it's these people. Like, Casey Musgraves is my competition, not, you know what I mean? And that took me into a professional mindset, how to hone my craft, how to become a songwriter. And then I just went into a crazy songwriting thing, you know what I mean? So I started much later than most artists. Like I started pretty much in my 20s, right? But like maybe at some point I'll write a handbook on like the steps I took to get to where I am, because there are logical things mentally I did. Some things took longer than others. Some things you could probably avoid or do it differently. But for the everyday working musician who's trying to build a career that is like an industry career, whatever that means, there are steps you can take without having to have this lottery pick moment where you're just picked by the label, or you just had a viral video, you know what I mean? And I, so
even in that, when you talk like that, there's a kindredness in that, because I've often said I've been on this slow, broken escalator ride that's like always going up. It hasn't stopped, hasn't broke down, and much the same. Like I felt like for me, I signed a record deal 5 years ago now to an indie label out of Toronto called MDM Recordings, a country label. A small operation, but we're small but mighty, doing some good things here in the Canadian country music scene. But I really believe in exactly what you're saying. I've thought about that too, like the idea of writing a guidebook for artists that believe you have to be picked up by the machine in order to be successful. And I don't agree with that. I think you can build your own success without that, albeit it's harder. But I think the rewards could be that much greater as well.
Now more than ever, like the audience is right there. Like we've never had a time in history. It's now more than ever, and I think it's better than ever to try to do as much as you can yourself, to attain as much as your control, creative control, financial control yourself. We did it by default. Like I had meetings with Island Records in the UK. I've had meetings with Sony. You know what I mean? Obviously none of them went anywhere really, but I've been in those rooms and had those conversations, and I realized, as a Black singer-songwriter in the folk Americana, space, I'm on my own. You know what I mean? Like nobody gets this. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not like, I don't have the aesthetic that like they're trying to sell. It's hard for that, so. And I'm grateful for it, you know what I mean? And I'm grateful that I never quit. I'm grateful that my wife has always been by my side to kind of like show me support and just let me know, like, you got this, you know what I mean? And England was, like, to go back a little bit, England had a meeting with, I don't even know what his job is now, but he worked for Spotify. Not at the time he worked for Spotify, but he eventually started working for Spotify. He was a manager. And we had a lunch meeting with him, and he was talking about managing us or doing bookings for us. I said to Ashton, my wife Ashton, if I don't get confirmation about my career within a year, then I might call it quits. You know what I mean? Because like I just don't want to do this forever. Like if it's not, if it doesn't make sense. And the manager was like, I asked him, why did you even take the meeting with us? It's because I see your potential, man. Like when I can just spot potential. And he's like, don't ever stop. Like you have something special, keep going, right? And that was like that's all I needed to hear. You know what I mean? And that was just like, okay.
The affirmation,
The affirmation. Because a lot of people at that time, I won't say a lot, but there were people in my life at that time that were like doubting what I was doing. And like going back to family, it's not that people don't want to support you, but most people you encounter experience the world through their failures, right? And they create not buffers, but like safety nets based off of the failures of themselves. And then they pass those failures on to the people around them and say, oh, you can't do that. You got to be careful. Like my relationship didn't work. So you got to be careful with this relationship. Or I was, I tried to be artistic and it didn't work for me. So, it's not going to work for you. And
projecting their failures onto others. Right.
Right. Yeah. And it's not always bad, because if you have experience, share your experience and let it be known. But oftentimes it's not about experience. It's about just stopping somebody from doing something.
Hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. More with I in just a minute. Hey everybody, it's me, your host, Don Amaro, and I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about a brand new project I've got going on. This year, I just wrote a brand new book called These Roots of Love. A few years ago, my brother-in-law passed away. He was only 41 years old and left behind his 3 little girls who are about the same age as my kids. And I had this story sort of unfold in my mind about an acorn that sprouted into a tree that lived this wonderful life in a valley of other trees around it, which were its family. And then one day a storm blows in and unfortunately the tree doesn't survive. But the story doesn't end there. It continues on to talk about the life and love and beauty that exists beyond the life that the tree once had. And so my hope is that this book could be somewhat of an aid when people are having those tough conversations with young minds and hearts, like I say. Head on over to rootsoflove.ca to find out more information about this book. You can order it today. There's an audio version as well. rootsoflove.ca to find out more. I venture to guess that a lot of the time it's people trying, if you put your hand on the stove and you burn your hand, you go, well, don't touch that because I know that's hot, you're going to get hurt. I think sometimes it probably comes from a sense of care in a way, but also I think there is an element of like allowing people to go out and find it for themselves. Like even as a parent, you might know this too, but like, when we were teaching our kids literally about the stove, like it's hot, we wouldn't let them touch it, but we'd be like, by the way, that's hot. We're going to warn you and we're going to show you that it's hot. Right. And sometimes I think that, I guess one analogy is that there is that element of protection, but in this context, being in the music industry is not necessarily you're going to go get burned, but there's a chance that you're probably going to get burned.
There's more of a chance that you'll get burned than not get burned. But yeah. And I think people, their intentions are good, and I always, but their intentions are not always pure, if that makes sense.
Yep, totally. Well, I think because there's probably somewhere in the back of their mind too, that there's this jealousy. Well, then if you make it, then I'm going to be even more hurt. I didn't.
That's deep,
right?
Yeah, that's therapy couch stuff, right? But that's real. Like no, but there is a part of we can go down that path. The people, how do I say? I don't want to be negative, but like people do try to sabotage other people because. I remember, I'll give you an example that's not like talking about something. Like, I don't drink. I never drank ever, right? And you go to parties and stuff. I'd still go to parties. And like anybody say, oh, you're not drinking? Oh, I don't drink. And then immediately they feel guilty. And they got to tell me like, well, I only drink on these days or only da-da-da-da. And it's like, hey, I'm not here. I'm not judging you. I'm not here to tell you what to do. So if people feel guilty or they feel like, oh, like, if you have a higher standard, you make me feel insecure about what I'm doing. And it's just like, and again, I don't think drinking or not drinking is a higher standard. I have my own choices, my own reasons for that. But people will do that in life and everything. You know what I mean? Like, and it's all rooted from trauma.
Their own experiences.
It's rooted from, it's rooted from like systemic classism. Like there's so many elements to why we do the things we do. Ultimately, every choice is our own. So you have a choice to go down this path or not go down this path. But there are reasons why we're insecure. There's reasons why. And it's not always a matter of, oh, you're just a jerk or you're just an asshole or you just don't believe in me. It's because, like Sometimes it's just financial reasons. Like, I don't want you to live in poverty. I mean, we didn't grow up in poverty, you know what I mean? But like, maybe there were moments where like certain bills had to be paid that month, and my overall experience was in poverty, but that was a tough month. And I don't want my children to go through that month or whatever, right? It's, like if I wasn't a musician, I'd be like a therapist or something, or a clinical psychologist or something, because I can go heavy on this stuff, because I part of why I feel like traveling and seeing the world is because like reading people and intuiting people and getting a vibe from people is something I love doing, and something I like to like connect with people and learn the true elements of them.
Right.
But it gets deep, and I think that's why for me music is so valuable, because I can distill all that in very simple melodies and chords and words in my voice. You know what I mean? And without getting too heady, because I can get heady, extremely heady. I just put that in a very simple capsule that I can just say, here, this is how I want to help you get through trauma. This is why I want to help you get through classism. And I know it sounds weird saying classism, but I want to using that example because we're talking about like our careers and financials and not going to university or whatever. But like those things affect, our mentality affects where we, not all the time. Like oppression can be oppression, in that oppression can be a thing that just keeps someone there intentionally, right? That's a whole nother conversation. But there is a part of life where mentality can overcome oppression. You know what I mean? It might require a fight, or it might require some kind of resistance, but I do think that music has a way of just getting to the core and getting to what people need to hear without like talking about it. You know what I mean?
Well, is it Bob Marley that said, where words fail, music speaks? Is that a Bob Marley quote?
Yeah, probably. He would say something as beautiful as that. Yeah.
And so I listened this past week. I really dove into Prospect, and you talk about these things about, man. Honestly, I know I'm far from the first person to tell you this, but you got such a gift of like speaking from the heart to the heart. I hear your words, and I don't just hear them, but I feel it. And there's such a gift in that I receive, and I'm grateful for. I wanted to go back on something for just a second here, because you mentioned it a little while ago, sort of being a Black folk Americana singer. You feel like you're more particularly here in Canada, a lot of record labels don't always know where that space is for you. Because you had said in 2021, when you talked about when you were reaching out to labels, and the label said to you, we're not a label with expertise in soul and R&B. And you said, well, I'm actually a folksy singer-songwriter whose music is similar to any artist on that particular roster. And they apologized, but then you said the psychological damage was already done. And I loved this line. You said, I'm not going to allow anybody to judge my book by the color of my skin. And I thought that was such a great way to portray that. And so I guess I want to know how you've navigated that piece of the story, because you've mentioned a couple of times, traveling the world as a tall, scruffy Black man, that you've maybe felt a little bit safer because of that. But on this side of it, like feeling also marginalized, and feeling like in the music community not feeling embraced sometimes because of the way you look.
So when I say the damage was already done, I don't want to belittle anybody who has gone through like real traumatic experiences. You know what I mean? But trauma can be different. There's different levels of trauma, right? Yeah, I agree. To my career, that someone saying that was kind of traumatic in a way, because of what it did for my first two records. I wouldn't put my face on the first two records, right? I had this I concocted this whole strategy of like how I'm going to sell my records. So like if I don't show my face and people just hear my voice, then they'll receive the music. But just the idea of having to think like that, you know what I mean? Ed Sheeran never had to think like that. Maybe he did. Maybe he did. Maybe he's like, I'm not Brad Pitt, so maybe, you know what I mean? But not just based off of his skin color. I mean, he's a ginger, so who knows? Like, in the UK, there's probably some racism towards ginger. So maybe Ed Sheeran's not the best example. But I'm sure there are artists who never have to think about not putting their face on the record to trick people, right? And I would have never thought that way, because prior to that, my face were on my record. And I changed that because of that conversation from a label that I respected, that I looked up to. And that if I said their name now, people would all be shocked, because they have a significant space in the Canadian music industry, right? And I don't think the person was being racist. I don't think the person was trying to scar me or hurt me. I think they just said what they say in the industry and they just say what they thought. You know what I mean?
Have you felt more supported in your role now as a musician in the arts and in the folk and Americana community, or have you felt you're still
No.
struggling there?
I don't think I'm struggling. I feel like I have a lot to prove. Like I think I have an axe to grind a little bit. I think that I believe truly in my heart that I'm gonna be one of those stories in Canada where we're like, how did we miss this? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I do get support here and there from certain people, and but I don't like saying it because it sounds like I'm bragging or it sounds like I'm blowing my head up. But I'm realizing that like the people who brag and who act cocky, I would never do that. Those are the people that people praise. You know what I mean? Like when you're humble and kind about it, people just like, oh yeah, he's doing his thing. But like, if certain artists in Canada had the numbers that I had on streaming, if they saw my books or whatever, you know what I mean? The awards would be flying left, right, and center. You know what I mean? And I don't say that to say like I'm great or whatever, but it's like I don't jump from the mountaintop and say, hey, in this space of folk Americana, I'm one of the most streamed artists in Canada. I've been on this Spotify folk global chart for over 50 something weeks with Noah Khan, Taylor Swift, like every single artist on the top 50 were label artists. You know what I mean? Like major label or had some major label affiliation. And I was the only one on there. Like maybe I need to put a package together and send it out. I kind of don't care because I remind myself that like I care. Yes, I do care. But like I kind of don't care because I make music for people. And that's why I got into it. I didn't get into music for awards or for radio interviews. Those things are good because it shows that people care. It gives you affirmation. But, the real affirmation is the messages I get from people in my DMs. I got a message just a couple of days ago from a guy who said he believes the last song his brother listened to before I died was my song, Until You. You can't.
That's better than any award.
You can't. There's no award that can compare to that. You know what I mean?
Well, I said so many times in my career, people, I get asked, what's the highlight of your career? And, there's fun gigs, there's still bucket list things that I'd like to do. But I've always said the highlight for me in my career has been hearing from somebody saying this song hit me in this way. And that beats any award that I've ever had, and I feel like for me, it's always been about affecting the heart. It hits me first. And my goal is to hopefully hit you in the heart as well.
It's easy to get jaded. It's easy to feel like no one's paying attention, especially when you're a Black artist in the folk space. You know what I mean? Especially when, like, even Nashville. Like, I love going to Nashville. I love writing, creating music in Nashville. But I don't have like a strong footprint yet in Nashville. Like, and that takes time. That takes networking. That takes certain types of relationships. My music has gone around the globe, but I'm still like in limbo where like Canada hasn't completely dug its teeth into me. The US hasn't completely dug its teeth into me. And then I have certain things in the UK going, and in Europe, my music is bubbling, especially like Germany. So like, I truly believe that there will be a convergence and like a synchronicity of all of it coming together where my moment, whatever that means, will happen. You know what I mean? Like, and that's why I don't stop. That's why I don't care how old I am.
That tipping point, right? That tipping point, whatever that is on the scale. Like, there's I can't remember what it's called, but there's like an actual scale that
it's
you might know.
Not critical mass, but like I think
it's a bit of that.
A good word.
Yeah, where just like all of a sudden, not that you don't still grind and you don't still build and you don't still work towards something, but there is this tipping point where it's like, this is. I don't know, safe feels like the wrong word to use too, but like this is working. And the big part of it is just like exposure, and actually I can, fully pay my bills and know that I'll have this forever, right?
Right. And I look at it like, if you disappeared and stopped making music, how many of your audience would care? Right? Do you have enough people that would be like waiting for your next project? Like, we need, you know what I mean? So that's like the tipping point. I think that's a good term. Are the critical mass of fans who are like, I want I's music forever. I want Don's music forever. And if he doesn't make music, I'm going to be posting every day until he makes a new album. You know what I mean? Like
that's a good point
a critical
too.
Mass that you'll work forever like that. So I don't think I've hit that yet, but I'm super confident. Like I, Prospect was me breaking into a level of confidence, by going deep into myself and deep into the music. It's not like a heavy album. I mean, there's moments where it's heavy, but like, it was just me pouring out during a time where it's like, I could do that. You know what I mean? And my next record, I just feel like, oh, it's just confidence. It's just like, this is what I want to do. And I'm going to do it at the highest level that I can do it. And I'm going to find the people who are going to help me accomplish that. You know what I mean? Who are going to support that in every facet. Like, as big as my voice is, I want the people around me to be that big. You know what I mean? Like, I know my voice is powerful. So the people that are working with me have to be that powerful as well, right?
Yeah. When did you start? 10, 15 years ago?
2011, 12.
Okay.
Let's say 11.
When you did that to now, have you seen a growth in people's openness to you and to what you do? Like again, being a folksy Americana Black artist, have you felt like I'm asking this because as an Indigenous, Métis artist, I've really seen a shift, partly because the reconciliation conversation is so huge in our country, and I've felt the weight of that, and I felt the shift of people going, we need to create change, and I'm really somebody who's trying to be on the front lines of that change. So I'm coming from a place of saying I've seen change. Have you, in your perspective, in your shoes, felt change happening?
I'm the guy. Yes, I'll say yes to be first and foremost, yes, but I'm the guy that's like, what does change mean? Right? So do we change the pieces of a broken system, or do you change the whole system? Right?
Dismantling, yeah.
Right. And maybe I'm an extremist, maybe an anarchist. I don't know. I don't like. I'm very much like a pacifist at the end of the day. But I think that there is an element to the system that's broken.
I agree.
You know what I mean? And what I like about my people, and I say my people, like people, the descendants of slaves of the Americas, right? Is that we keep pushing the morality goalpost because we want equality for everybody in every way possible, right? You know what I mean? Like, people can say, well, you're free. You were free. You're free. And they're like, well, we want the vote. We want to be able to sit on wherever part we want clean water. So yes, I do think that people are being more sensitive to my place in the industry, but there are things that I want to see dismantled, to be honest. You know what I mean? Yep. There's an overhaul of things that I want to see. You know what I mean? I was in Nashville talking with some folks, some potential business partners, and we're talking about natives, and we were saying, like, so what would be the best solution? Like, and this is gonna go. We don't have to go down this path if it's too heavy. But like,
I'm good for it. Yeah, I'm here for it.
I'll just put it out
totally.
There. Like, we have European leadership all throughout this country, right? If this is native land and that's what we were standing by, what steps are we taking to give it back to them? We can put all the grant funding into the native community we want. We can get all the resources we want and give to the native community. We can give them tax-free life. We can say, you never have to pay for groceries in your life again. But will we ever be willing to relinquish control?
What was taken?
Right? Will we ever be willing to actually make reparations, which is just repairing the damage?
Right.
Right? So that's the conversation. So my mind goes there. That's why I stay quiet all the time, because my mind doesn't so yes, I have, and I'm grateful for the people, the individuals in my life who have even came up and apologized for their behavior, whoever, you know what I mean? But this is not an individualistic problem. You know what I mean? This is the system. And I'm not even sure, I'm just being a philosopher. I'm not even sure that we have to dismantle the system. I'm not even sure if that's the best situation, because there's geopolitics that we have to think about, that we created those things over these years based off of, the complete dismantling of the native population, the complete dehumanization of the Black population. And now these systems exist because we did those things. So I don't know what we can do. You know what I mean? So it's not as simple as I'm making it.
It's definitely not. Yeah.
But that is the question that I'll always have. You know what I mean? In the music industry, if for decades, almost the better part of a century, Black people have created the most wealth in the music industry and possibly in the entertainment industry. I mean, at least sports and music, we'll say, right? When do we create a balance in ownership and leadership in that space, as opposed to we own the whole label, and then we have a president who's a Black person. Like, when does the Black person own the whole label? It's not about black and white. It's about, when are we going to stop exploiting? And this could be Black, it could be race, it could be gender, it could be anything. Like, so I will always look at the world from the lens of where my people have come from and where we want to go. Because for whatever reason, deep down in our hearts, we have a strong desire for morality. We have a strong desire for equity. And that desire has pushed us and kept us alive through some of the worst conditions in human history. You know what I mean? So that's a heavy, long-winded answer to your question. But yes.
Yeah.
But no, you know what I mean?
Well, dude, I appreciate all that, because I think, again, this show is called Through the Fire, and it's talking about, and that's a fire we're all in the midst of right now. And, when you talk about, like, people often say, what does reconciliation mean to you? I'm going to philosophize for a second here too. And you talk about, what for Indigenous people, what is it that they really want? Well, I've always thought of this analogy, and I don't know if this has been said anywhere else. It was just something I had a thought of a couple of years ago. This idea that, imagine a home, and it's all Indigenous people in this home. And then one day European settlers come along and they say, no, we're going to use this, we're going to take this, we're going to have this, and you're going to go out and live by the trash cans, right? And there's no resources there that you can really use. Right. And then time goes by, a few centuries pass by, and then everybody in the house goes, wait a second, this is not ours. We don't own this. We took this from those people over there. And then they say, we apologize. We're recognizing the errors of our ways. Albeit, you still got to stay out by the trash. So now you've apologized for the wrongdoing that you've done, but the giving the land back, giving the place back hasn't happened. And so I think that's the psyche. And I'm kind of, maybe I'm dumbing it down too much in that sort of context, but that's my perspective when I think about.
I look at it that way.
Yeah, the way maybe a lot of Indigenous people in this country have felt in Canada and North America. And so that's maybe a piece of the story that not a lot of people think about, is like when you really go back and look at the history and to where we are today, and this whole land back movement. I think that's part of the conversation that people need to be kind of keeping in mind. So I felt like I wanted to share that piece.
Yeah, unfortunately, it may never happen.
It may never happen.
Because giving up power, like, the other side of it is, if someone acknowledges that they got a position in a job because of nepotism, or because of lack of equity, or whatever, privilege, let's say, but maybe a better way to say it. And them being a part of fixing the problem is losing their job and losing their ability to provide for their family. Should we expect that person to give up that job? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the hard question. Now you're getting into like martyrdom, kind of, almost. And most people are not martyrs. If everybody was a martyr, then we wouldn't have the term. You know what I mean? Like, so it's a weird thing, because I understand people have, like, if we're all fighting for progress, like, we're all, like, it's in the system of capitalism. Whoever can, capitalize on the situation moves ahead, and that's how it works.
I think that the question comes to my mind, in my heart, is the moralistic compass, which probably doesn't come into conversation a lot in politics, right? Like, what's the moral right here? And we do live in this capitalistic society, and it's like there's different tiers and levels of it too. Like, people look at guys like you and me and go, man, those guys are rich. They're wealthy. They're living the life. And in comparison to the life that they might have, yeah, we're rich guys. And then I think they look to us going, what are you doing for me? Right? And then we're looking to the next level up beyond us going, well, what are they doing for me? And then it's this broken system, like you say, that we have to, like, change. And it's changing the psyche of people.
And that's hard, man. Like, I think that's why I focus so much on the people and the individuals. My music's not political. I have very strong political opinions about everything, right? I don't get into it often, but it's about people at the end of the day, and you gotta affect the hearts of people. That's why I think music is such a great vessel.
You do it so well, brother.
To get into people's hearts and to get them to feel like, I can do something. You know what I mean? Because I had like during the whole like George Floyd debacle, I was speaking to my friend and mentor, um, black guy in the music industry, and he's very successful, you know. And we were just talking about it because it's the first time. I think it's like the first time me and him ever had this kind of conversation. And he said something to me that will always stick with me. He's like, when they brought us here, they never had any intention of freeing us. We were always supposed to be slaves, right? And when he said, I don't know what it just sparked something heavy in me. You know what I mean? And you could say for the native population, you were supposed to be extinct. Like there was never any intention of sharing anything. Like you were supposed to be wiped off the face of the earth. That was, if that was possible, it would have happened. Like what they did in Utah to the Native Americans in Utah. I don't know if you know about all that, but like crazy story, right? Now we have to be some of the most forgivable people on this planet, our communities, because you know, like what we should harbor in our hearts to this day, you know, is terrifying. You know what I mean? If the weight of what we experienced was dished out in revenge, it would be insanity on planet Earth right now, right? And my point is like the problem that we're seeing in the world, the problems are, you know, they'll never end, they'll never change. Maybe our lives are only this long, you know what I mean, in the grand scheme of the universe of life. So like we have to find a way to enrich ourselves in these moments. And when the heart changes, the condition can possibly change. It's like a slow percolation. Like it's not like either it's going to be everything. You got to change the people who are operating the system, which is what you're saying, you know, change the hearts of everybody, the psyche, or you got to get rid of the whole system and start over, right? And I don't think we're going to get rid of the whole system and start over, you know?
I mean, man, if you and I could solve the problem, that'd be pretty beautiful. But I think music has the power to be part of the medicine that's healing the system. Right. You know what I mean? And so, and I hear that in yours. And, you know, I want to be respectful of time too. I mean, you and I both, I think, could sit and have a good long conversation because
for a long time,
I really enjoy these deep conversations. That's really where I want to go. But at the same time, I want to be respectful of time. I know you got kids and family running around, and mine should be home relatively soon here too. And I gotta feed them some lunch right away. But I wanted to just say, first of all, thank you so much for spending some time with me and being willing to go deep and share as much as you have. Before I go, though, I want to know what's on the horizon for I. What are you looking down the future? Where do you want to go besides continuing to change hearts?
Man, so, you know, based off when this seems like it's going to air, I was recently just won a Black Music Awards, which is kind of awesome.
No
right?
way, that's incredible.
One of 5 artists.
Okay.
So that's cool. That was news I got to begin my year. That's like, oh wow, okay,
amazing.
Exciting. But I'm working on a new record. So my wife and I just bought a new house outside of Toronto. We left the city. In the process of getting my studio ready so that I can go into like next album mode. And like I was saying earlier, like I just feel like I don't know how to explain it. Like you just feel like, oh, no one's gonna stop me now. Like I've learned too much. And I'm still so fresh in this thing. Like there's a large population on this planet who doesn't know me. A lot of people in the industry don't have no clue who I am. So like I didn't have my moment yet. You know what I'm saying? And it's not like I had a moment, it didn't work, and then I'm coming back, hey, I'm back to have another moment. Like it's still like my moment can still happen. So the next album, the next cycle really excites me. Been having meetings. I just came back from Nashville, bringing some new people on my team. Prospect was an independent release with 30 Tigers. And have great support from David Macias at 30 Tigers. But, you know, a lot of what we did on that record, like me and Ashton are still like, I have boxes of like records in my garage that like, we're still the label at the end of the day. Like 30 Tigers is a distribution deal. I'm still the label, right? And from that experience, like we just learned so much and like we made so many mistakes and like we pushed so hard to get things to happen. And now once you do all those things yourself, you learn and you gain experience. You're like, oh, okay, on my next record, I won't do this, I'll do this. I know enough now to like take it to the next level. You know what I mean? Like and you're always pushing yourselves. Like last album, we tried to do a bunch of music videos and we learned things about like certain things there and like the timing of distributing the music videos, how much money you should put into a music video. Should you do 5 videos as opposed to one really good video and put all your money into that video? that's exciting. Getting to that. I think that's the biggest thing. Like working on new music, co-writing a lot more. I haven't done a lot
Any
of co-writing
tours?
in the
You playing
past.
out? You got some tours on the horizon, or
Yeah, Milo. I'm heading to Europe to tour with Milo in April, May, end of April, early May. Milo's a guy from Belgium. He's an incredible guy, incredible songwriter. We did a couple shows in Belgium in his home country at the end of the year, like in December. And we're gonna finish that tour up in April, May. So that's pretty much
awesome.
my next focus.
Okay.
But right now I'm just like I got an album in me that's I think is gonna be incredible. Like I got an
Really?
album in me
Yeah.
that people are gonna be like, wow, okay,
Okay.
you know.
I'm definitely looking forward to that. Your wife's name again?
Ashatan.
Ashatan. Do you and
Yeah.
Ashatan dream together? Do you sit there and talk about? I mean, obviously, if she's your manager, I'm assuming yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Our whole life is a dream together. Like
Yeah.
that sounded cheesy, but I mean
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, man. I love that.
I didn't mean it like that, but like
Yeah.
yeah, we like, you know, I'll write business plans out and like my business plans are more like vision plans more than like they're not it's you do the numbers and stuff like that, but it's more like, okay, what are my visions, what are my goals, how do I want to attain them, what do I want my team. For every album I do that, right? I just write out a business plan and she'll read through it and she'll help me work through it and I'll bounce my ideas off her. And like when I say I talk a lot, like she gets the bulk of that because when I'm out and doing stuff, I'm very quiet, very observant. I like to study the room and study the place I'm at. I don't talk a lot when I'm out, but when I'm with her, she gets all my ideas and I get, so and she, you know, she's been very supportive and like without her, I don't know how far I would have made it in this industry because, you know, she believed in me when not many people did. She saw the potential in me when when I say saw the potential in me, like she just always was like, you got this. There's some changes that I'm excited to talk about soon once we pen those things in and finalize, if they get finalized. And those will be exciting and those will be like career altering moments, I believe. So it's around the corner and I'm real excited about that. And she'll be there for everything, right?
Well, I just want to say I appreciate you so much. All of this stuff for me is so valuable, and just hearing you speak and the passion behind everything you do. We're grateful here on Through the Fire. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
As I always say, it takes a village to run things here at Through the Fire, and I want to thank my village, executive producer Sarah Burke, administrators Lori Brown and Alan Greyeyes, video and audio design by Chris Gaudry and his team at 44 Films, Feisty Creative for their design work, social media support by Johnson Design Company, and last but far from least, I want to thank our technical producers, Matt Kundle and Evan Serminski from the Sound Off Media Company. I look forward to sharing more great conversations just like this one on the next Through the Fire. You see the light.
Produced and distributed by the Sound Off Media Company.
Don't skip this ad. I saw your finger. You were trying to skip the ad. I didn't want to do this, and now we're stuck in it together. I'm Ryan. I'm the host of The Linz Report. The Linz Report is a snarky, humorous, yet balanced look at the headlines that fill your timeline every day. We're going to get straight to the point without muddying any of the waters. And remember, The Linz Report is not your parents' news commentary. We swear a lot here, like a whole lot. So tune in and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and find us at criermedia.co or wherever you get your fine podcasts, like they say at the end.